إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. This evening is the 15th lesson of the explanation of at-Tawḍīḥ wal-Bayān li-Shajarat al-Īmān, or the tree of faith by al-Īmān as-Saʿdī rahimahullah ta'ala. It is the 23rd of September 2025, corresponding to the first of al-Thani 1447. And I think before we actually get into the book, just a reminder of the importance of seeking knowledge in Islam. That this is one of the best ways that a Muslim can spend his or her time, is learning their deen, learning how to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that He prescribed for us to draw closer to Him. And the way that that is done and has been done from the time of the Prophet ﷺ is to take that knowledge from the scholars directly. Not that a person cannot read books or should not read books, because every Muslim who has the ability should take some time out of their day to read books that are going to help them in that pursuit of knowledge. But the default is to study with the scholars of Islam, and especially when it comes to the muqaddimat al-ulum, or when we start talking about the introduction to each discipline of Islam, so that a person is getting their guidelines for each particular science or each particular discipline from the scholar who took from the scholars who came before them back to the Prophet ﷺ. And I mean, for those who don't have in their midst scholars or strong students of knowledge, then there are ways like now where a person can take from the scholars even via, the modern ways, whether that's video or audio or so forth, as the scholars have mentioned. But the reality is that when people take directly from the books, and we've all seen this, when they take directly from books and don't study with the scholars, their mistakes are going to be more than what they get right. That may be because there are mistakes in the book itself, meaning just like typos. I'm not even talking about the author made a mistake in his understanding, but just that there are mistakes in the book that make a person not understand what was the intention of the author. And then, as the scholars say, if you want to know the mistake of your Shaykh, sit with other than him. Right? Because your Shaykh, it's impossible for him to be infallible, because he's not the Prophet ﷺ. So he's going to make some mistakes about something, and that's why you'll have multiple Shaykhs, and you'll learn from all of them bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And the reason why I'm mentioning that that this is so important is because knowledge is heavy. And having a Shaykh help guide you through that process of knowledge. What should you study first? What next? Not just in each discipline, but which discipline do you study before the other, for example? And how do you grow as a student of knowledge and really understand your deen and understand what the scholars are saying themselves? And the Prophet ﷺ, and he emphasized the importance of the scholars and knowledge when he says, "Inna Allah la yaqbidu al-ilma intiza'an yantazi'u min qulub al-ibad." And Allah Azza wa Jalla does not snatch away the knowledge from the people just like from their hearts. وَلَكِنْ يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمِ بِقَبْضِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. But knowledge is snatched away by the passing of the scholars. Is that Allah Azza wa Jalla takes the souls of these scholars, حَتَّى لَمْ يُبْقِ, or in some narrations, حَتَّى لَمْ يَتْرُكْ عَالِمًا, until he leaves no person of knowledge behind. Till he leaves no person of knowledge behind. فَاتَّخَذَ النَّاسِ رُؤُوسًا جُهَالًا. And so people, because of the lack of scholars, they take ignorant people as their leaders. And they will be asked, فَسُئِلُوا فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. And so they'll be asked, and then they will give fatwas with no knowledge and advice and this and that. And you see it with some of the, especially with some of the younger people who put themselves forward to lead people, and they don't have not the knowledge or experience for that matter. فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. So they give fatwas without knowledge. فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا. And so they go astray and they lead other people astray. And today, we witnessed the death of one of the great scholars of Islam, Shaykh Abdul-Aziz al-Shaykh, rahimahullah ta'ala, the Mufti of Saudi Arabia since May of 1999, when Shaykh bin Baz died, rahmatullah alayh. And so you're talking 26 plus years, Gregorian, almost 27 years, Hijri, that he served in that position of the Grand Mufti, rahmatullah alayh. And even before he was the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, he was well known for the khutbah on Namira, Yawm Arafah. He was the khatib for 35 years, rahmatullah alayh. And he delivering the khutbah to the largest gathering of Muslims on the day of Arafah. And alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to meet the Shaykh on several occasions, and kicking myself right now because this last Hajj, he was on Hajj, rahmatullah alayh, and for one reason or another, subhanAllah, I didn't get a chance to meet him, and that would have been the last time, Wallahu musta'an. That being said, I want to just mention one thing about his life, rahmatullah alayh, besides the knowledge part, because he has a long life, dedicated to learning and teaching the deen of Islam. But there was another part of his life that some of the people that were close to him mentioned, and I'm sure this will come out at some point, wallahu ta'ala a'lam, but just as an encouragement. The Shaykh, rahmatullah alayh, used to finish the Quran in his salat every 6 days. So at night time, he prayed with 5 juz. That was his norm. Pray with 5 juz every night. And you can hear it in his fatwa. The Quran comes off of his tongue like all of it was like Fatiha. All of it. SubhanAllah. So it's clear. What I'm saying is clear. It's clear. You can, because SubhanAllah, before he got sick in the latter years, he was on a program called this mic. Before he got sick in his latter years, he was on a program called Nur al-Darb. So the senior scholars of Islam, every night they would come on the radio, and fatwa would come in and they would answer people's questions from all over. And so on that program, you're hearing him answer the questions live, and the Quran would roll off of his tongue, subhanAllah, and may Allah Azza wa Jal reward him with the best. May Allah Azza wa Jal give him a Firdaus al-A'la in Jannah, and put him in the company of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. May Allah Azza wa Jal reward all of us for our sabr in this trial, and may Allah Azza wa Jal bring the ummah to good and replace what we've lost with good. Allah musta'an. Some people, subhanAllah, their version of what, I'm just going to say this because you're going to hear people say other things. Just because anybody from Saudi Arabia to them is they'll throw labels around. He's a Wahhabi, he's this, he's that. He was A, B, C, and D. And SubhanAllah, if they could only hold their tongues and realize that these are people of the Quran, people who dedicated their life to knowledge and deen, and just because they follow some innovation in Islam, which came hundreds of years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, they can't see the Sunnah for being the Sunnah, because their vision is blurred, if not veiled. And so they accuse others of things that they themselves are guilty of. Wallahu musta'an. SubhanAllah, we can only hope to have the knowledge and the sabr. That was another thing, SubhanAllah. You see the ulama during Hajj. Hajj is one of those things that distinguishes people. Like it's one of those furqans, if you will, right? And like you start to see who can hang and who can't hang, as they say. So you'll have some of the scholars that don't have the same stamina. Khalas, they walked all day. They were doing this. It's hot. It's 120 degrees. It's so khalas. People come and ask questions. Come back different time, whatever. Because khalas, they're done, right? And then you see some of them. It's like the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm not like you all, right? Some of the Sahaba, they wanted to fast all night as well, not just in the daytime, because they would see the Prophet ﷺ doing, we saw it, right? Which is pushing the fast from the day into the night, not eating or drinking anything. He said, I'm not like you all. Allah feeds me, right, and gives me drink. And I'm not saying, obviously, that these scholars are like the Prophet ﷺ in any way. But what I am saying is that sometimes people are given something from Allah Azza wa Jal that's beyond what's material, right? There's something else that keeps them going that's well beyond anything that we can actually witness, with the eye, or something that's tangible. Their spirit is being fed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and given that kind of energy. And the Shaykh, rahmatullahi alayhi, was one of them. Again, may Allah Azza wa Jal accept his good and forgive him for his shortcomings and have mercy on him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. Today, we're going to continue with chapter or with 3.7. So we're on chapter 3, which deals with the fruits of eman, and we've made it to the seventh fruit, if you will, or the seventh benefit of eman. And you'll see there also it says Allah guides one to the straight path, and it says 3.8, one is comforted at the onset of calamity and hardship. Those are actually the same fruit, as we'll see inshallah ta'ala when we go through it. And then what is mentioned here, 3.9, love of Allah, and 3.10, the raising of ranks. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll do our best to cover those today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. طيب. Can you give Adil the mic, please? Jazakallah khair. Go ahead, read the right side.
The right side here.
Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. 3.7. Allah guides one to the straight path. He guides him towards learning the truth, acting by it, accepting all beloved things with gratitude, and facing trials and hardships with contentment and patience. Allah exalted says, but as for those who have faith and do righteous actions, their Lord will guide them by their faith. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and no misfortune occurs except by Allah's permission. Whoever has faith in Allah, He will guide his heart. Allah has knowledge of all things.
Keep going, some of the Salaf.
Some of the Salaf said in an explanation of this verse, it refers to one who is afflicted with a misfortune but knows that it is from Allah, and therefore is content with it and accepts it.
Okay, so this point, this is one of the greatest fruits of Iman. That is that by Iman, because of Iman, Allah Azza wa Jal guides a person to the straight path and on the straight path. يعني إلى الصراط المستقيم وفي الصراط المستقيم. And by the way, note this, when you make that dua in Surah Al-Fatiha, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, you say ihdina and you do not have any preposition after it. So even in the English, when it says guide us to the straight path, that's, and I know it's hard for us to actually translate into English, but that's not 100%. It doesn't give the full meaning. And in Arabic, it says ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, yani guide us the straight path, because it includes to and on, and those are not the same thing. Those are not the same thing. The to the straight path is knowledge. On the straight path is the actions, right? So let me give you an example, right? So somebody says right now, what's the way to City Hall? How do you get to City Hall from here, right? You just say you can make a left, or you can say go north, right? And you'll get to City Hall, right? It's right there. That's knowledge. Does that mean that the person is actually going to stay on that path? Does that mean, for example, let's just say they were driving and literally they're on E, like literally, they're not going to get another block. They need to know where the gas station is over there. So they need to know different things about the road. What if there's a detour on the path, like cops block the road? How do they go off and get back? Like all of this is part of not just the knowledge of how to get there, but what to do once you're on the path. And when you ask Allah to guide you the straight path, you're asking for both to and on. All right, which we'll talk about in a second. So the fruit of Iman, this fruit of Iman is that Allah will guide you to and on the straight path because of your Iman. All right. The author mentions two ayahs to prove that point. The first of those ayahs is a statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla in Surah Al-Taghabun, Inna ladina amanu wa amilu salihat. Nah? Surah Yunus. Nah. Inna ladina amanu wa amilu salihat yahdihim rabbuhum bi-imanihim. طيب. Those who have Iman, and Iman, by the way, there's a concept in English which they call active faith. Active faith. Iman, probably the best way you can translate is active faith, right? Because it represents what is in the heart, which most people would consider to be faith, which is different from belief, by the way. And I do want us to distinguish between faith and belief, even in English, right? Iman is not belief. And I'm not saying that like we can just go and change all of the translations of the Quran in the ladina, ya ayyuha ladina amanu, oh you believe, because of khalas, that's just what you think of. But Iman really does not translate to belief. It translates a lot better to faith. But again, there is a concept called active faith, and it's closer to that, because Iman is not just what is in the heart, right? It has to have some level of action that validates the claim of faith that is in the heart. Type. So, inna ladina amanu, those who have Iman and do righteous deeds, Allah, their Lord, guides them bi imanihim. Type. That bat here, some of the scholars say that, and most of them actually, from what I've seen, say that it is sababiyya, right? So it means that it is the cause of something, meaning that because of their Iman, or by reason of their Iman, Allah guides them. Tayyib. Yahdihim. Tayyib. It doesn't mention guides them to what, because the guidance is unrestricted here. They get full guidance. Again, to the path and on the straight path. We'll talk about what that looks like with the night time. So if we wanted to just translate it, we would say their Lord will guide them because of their iman. So I know here it says by their faith, and that's because there is another way to look at it, right? And that's what some of the scholars of tafsir, they say the ba is ba al-isti'ana, the ba of al-isti'ana, which means with the help of. So if we look at it from that way, then iman becomes the instrument by which they are guided. Their iman is the tool, right? That is guiding them. Right. Mujahid, rahimahullah ta'ala, you'll see at the bottom here, he says, فَكَانَ الْإِيمَانُ نُورًا يَمْشُونَ بِهِ. Their iman is the light with which they walk. Okay, so if the ba is sababiyya, right, if it's the cause of something, right, then that's going to emphasize what the Abdurrahman bin Nasir as-Saʿdī is talking about here. So that's the reward of faith. The reward of that faith is that they are guided. Okay. If we say that the ba is isti'ana, then the ayah is emphasizing the function of iman. And that is that iman actively becomes a person's guiding light. Light in the dunya, because iman gives a person clarity, right? And purpose and definition and so forth. And guiding light in the hereafter, like literally, as we'll cover inshallah ta'ala, as Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions in Surah Al-Hadid, that the munafiqeen, they come and they want the light of the believers, because the believers' path, the people of iman's path is lit because of their iman, right? So the two are actually not mutually exclusive. I mean, both of them are actually true, and that's why many of the scholars, like Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala, mention both interpretations side by side. Play. Read what Saʿdī says in his tafsir on the left-hand side.
As-Saʿdī rahimahullah said, guide them by their faith. That is, by virtue of the faith they have. Allah rewards them with the greatest reward of all, guidance. He teaches them what benefits them, favors them.
This is guidance, right? These are manifestations of guidance, or subcategories, if you will, right? Teaching them what benefits them. يُعَلِّمُهُمْ مَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. Nah.
Favors them with deeds that arise from that guidance and directs them to reflect upon His signs.
This is all from the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that people reflect on the signs of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So that's a major form of guidance. Some people, they see the signs, the same ones that you see, and they don't reflect. They can't process it. They're looking at the same thing you're looking at, right? But subhanAllah, now mind you, this happens. We recognize this when we talk about physical sight, right? So a person can stand next to you and their vision is really bad. That's why they wear glasses, right? And you see something super clear, and for them it's not clear at all, right? Or you might see certain colors and they're colorblind, so it doesn't look the same to them, right? Because they don't, even though you are looking at the same thing, standing in the same place. There is for lack of a better term, there's a spiritual processing as well, a spiritual vision, where you see certain things very clear, and it's a clear indication of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And for them, they can't see it. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, through a person's iman, guides them to be able to see those things as well. Now,
in this worldly life, He guides them to the straight path and keeps them firm upon it.
Stop there. He guides them to the straight path. In Arabic, it says ila sirat al-mustaqim wa ala sirat al-mustaqim. So that's why I translated it that way. To the straight path, and keeps them firm on that path. Right. So to and on. Nah.
And in the abode of recompense, He guides them to the path that leads into the gardens of bliss.
So in this life, to the straight path and on the straight path, and the next life, the path that leads into Jannah, Jannat and Na'im. Type the second ayah, which is the ayah of Surah Al-Taghabun. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, "Ma asaba min musibatin illa bi idnillah." That there is no calamity, no misfortune that occurs except with the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's His decree. Every calamity that happens is His decree. وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. So this is a conditional phrase. وَمَن يُؤْمِن, that's the condition. And whoever has iman, right, billah, in Allah Azza wa Jal, then what's the reward for that? Yahdi qalbahu, yahdi qalbah. Allah will guide his heart. Allah will guide his heart. Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim. Wallahu bi kulli shay'in alim. طيب. So here, Ibn Abbas, rahimahullah ta'ala, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, he said, "Man yu'min billahi yahdi qalbah," يعني يهدي قلبه لليقين. Allah guides his heart. What does that actually mean? He guides his heart to certainty. He guides his heart to certainty, to full conviction. فَيَعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَا أَصَابَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَهُ وَمَا أَخْطَأَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبَهُ. So he knows with full certainty that whatever happened to him was not meant to miss him. There's no escape. He knows it, and he has full confidence in that. And whatever passed him by, he was never meant to have. It was never meant to get. Whatever he lost, it was meant to be lost. Whoever has iman, وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ, then his heart will be guided. طيب. A few important points to mention here. And I want us to make sure that we pay attention to this. A person's guidance is going to be proportionate to the iman. So we've talked about this. Iman is not one level, right? Iman is various levels. And this is how a person, subhanAllah, even for themselves, you want to know where you need to put the effort in, where you need to put work in. If something happens to you, a musibah, some type of calamity befalls you, look at your own reaction. Where is your reaction? Do you say, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un," or do you start cursing? Because that's going to show you, that response there tells you a lot about your iman. All right? Are you meeting that calamity with sabr? All right? With even if you find it bitter, but you know that inside that processing is going on, and what comes off your tongue is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Or are you complaining? Are you expressing anger about what Allah Azza wa Jal decreed for you? And I'm not talking about what people have done to you, because there's a difference between not being pleased with what somebody is doing, haram, injustice, so on and so forth, and complaining about Allah Azza wa Jal's decree. Those are two different things. All right? طيب. Are you meeting that with even better than sabr? Like rida, right? That you are actually content with that difficulty that has come, or even greater, right? And to be able to reach a level of shukr and gratitude for even the difficulties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put you through, because you recognize that there are certain qualities that you can only get through being tested. And so you're grateful to Allah Azza wa Jalla for the difficulty of the test. Right? That's another level. I'm not saying that that's wajib, because it's not. It's not obligatory. However, it's another level of iman that we aspire for, or we aspire to. And without knowing that that's even a thing, then you don't aspire to it. Right? So here, there are three types of, or three issues when we look at guidance. So this is kind of like a summary of what comes in the books of tafsir. So there's guidance to sabr and rida and possibly even shukr, right? Which is the attitude, if you will. Like there's the guidance to the right response. And so you see even Sa'id ibn Jubair, rahimahullah ta'ala, and others from the scholars, they mention what is guidance here. And so very quickly, some scholars, they mention broad tafsir. So they give you the meaning of the ayah. And some mention anwa', if you will, like different types that fall under that category of guidance. So what he said, rahmatullah alayh, was that sabr here, or afwan, that the guidance of Allah here, وَمَن يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِي قَلْبَهُ, whoever has iman in Allah, Allah will guide his heart. He said He will guide him to say, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And the point here is that Allah Azza wa Jalla will guide his tongue as well. And that his tongue will speak in a manner that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he won't say things that are displeasing to Allah Azza wa Jalla. And then he also says, I find then the third point is the tranquility of the heart, which is a bit different from the sabr and rida, because that's how you're processing the calamity itself. But then there's a tranquility that comes over the heart, which is what is mentioned here. Some of the Salaf said in explanation of this verse, it refers to one who is afflicted with a misfortune but knows that it is from Allah and therefore is content with it and accepts it. So that's describing the condition of the heart. And that was Alqamah al-Nakha'i rahimahullah ta'ala who said that statement. طيب. Here, if you could sum it up, what you would say is that the guidance here is the reorientation of the heart. Yani Allah Azza wa Jalla guiding a person to reorienting their heart, recalibration of the heart during any calamity. All right, that's what the guidance is. So you have a strong conviction in al-qadr, and that person, and this is going to come now, inshallah, just mention it here as well. That person is going to find a comfort in iman that those without iman can't taste. They're not going to be able to experience that when they're hit with a musibah. And there is a sweetness in knowing that the hardship that you are going through has meaning, and that the way you respond will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a sweetness in knowing that. And those who don't have iman can't taste that, and they can't even fathom it, because life to them is meaningless. So why all of this difficulty? So iman really does reorient the world view of the people of iman. Now, one is faced with trials.
One is faced with trials and difficulties in every moment of life, but having faith and certainty serves to comfort and console one of them.
Okay, that is not exactly accurate. So I'm going to read what it says, and then it's not totally wrong, but it misses a major point. The author says, وَلَوْ لَمْ يَكُنْ مِنْ ثَمَرَاتِ الْإِيمَانِ إِلَّا أَنَّهُ يُسَلِّي صَاحِبَهُ عَنِ الْمَصَائِبِ وَالْمَكَارِهِ الَّتِي كُلُّ أَحَدٍ عُرْضَةٌ لَهَا فِي كُلِّ وَقْتٍ وَمُصَاحَبَةَ الْإِيمَانِ وَالْيَقِينِ أَعْظَمُ مُسَلٍّ عَنْهَا وَمُهَوِّنٍ لَهَا. Okay, so that part is about to come. But what he's saying here is, if there was no benefit of iman other than this benefit, then that would be sufficient. Why? Because iman is what consoles a person when they face difficulties, and everybody at every minute is subject to difficulty, subject to calamity. And nobody lives life without facing calamities. There's no such thing. And so he says, because everybody is subject to that and everybody will face calamities, if this was the only benefit of Iman, is that it brings you that comfort, right? Like, think about it from a physical perspective. Imagine you have one of those, like a ibuprofen at 800, right? And you know that it's a baby headache. You take or even let's just say it gets a little difficult. I mean, pounding a little bit. You take that 800, it goes away right away. Along with Radic. Halas? So that becomes a source of comfort because it takes away the pain, physical pain, right? Well, ibuprofen has other benefits, like brings down inflammation and some other. But if that was the only benefit of ibuprofen, that'd be enough, right? This is what he's saying here. I mean, that's a bad example, but you get the idea. Iman, if this was the only benefit, it's not, but if the only benefit was that it takes away, it helps redirect, not just takes away the pain, it helps redirect the pain so that you actually taste some sweetness in it and are rewarded for it. If that was the only benefit of Iman, that would be enough. Right? Tell you. And I don't think that meaning came out here, so I wanted to just highlight it. No.
Strong faith, reliance upon Allah, hope in the reward of Allah, and desire for His beneficence are the basic constituents that help bring this state about. The sweetness of the reward lessens the bitterness of patience.
Yeah, and if you can highlight that, go ahead in your book. Call it فَحَلَاوَةُ الْأَجْرِ تُخَفِّفُ مَرَارَةَ الصَّبْرِ. Yani, subhanAllah. I don't know that, maybe he got that from Ibn al-Qayyim, rahmatullahi alayhi, but it's a beautiful statement. حَلَاوَةُ الْأَجْرِ تُخَفِّفُ مَرَارَةَ الصَّبْرِ. Right? The sweetness of the reward helps to lessen the bitterness of sabr. Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِن تَكُونُوا تَأْلَمُونَ فَإِنَّهُمْ يَأْلَمُونَ كَمَا تَأْلَمُونَ وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. Yeah.
And if you feel pain, they too are feeling it just as you are. But you hope for something from Allah which they cannot hope for. Surah Nisa. And this is why you can find two people who have been afflicted with the same calamity or almost the same calamity, one of these two having faith and the other not, and there's a huge difference between the states of the two and the way that it affects them inwardly and outwardly.
All right, I'm going to read that again, and I want you to lock in, totally pay attention. So he says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, if you all are feeling pain, then know that they are feeling pain too. Psychologically, just stop right there. In other words, okay, you got punched in the mouth, but you punched him in the mouth too. So, okay, you got your tooth knocked out. He got his tooth knocked out. What are you stopping for? Like, up until now, you are in pain, they're in pain. إِن تَكُونُوا تَأْلَمُونَ فَإِنَّهُمْ يَأْلَمُونَ كَمَا تَأْلَمُونَ. They face the same pain that you face. The pain is universal. The suffering is shared. But where's the difference come in? وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. But you hope from Allah that which they can have no hope for. He said this is why you find two people afflicted with the exact same calamity. One of them has Iman. The other one doesn't. There's a huge difference between the way that it affects this one and that one. The believer through Iman is going to be consoled, is going to seek the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is going to be guided to some level of sabr. The kafir has raw pain, frustration, anger, right? Totally different reaction. And so while the pain and suffering is a universal experience, that hope is exclusive to people who have Iman. And it's you really have to think about it. Like, That's a horrible way to live. That is a horrible way to live without Iman. May Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us and our children and our families from that. And people who don't see any hikmah, they see no wisdom in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the difficulties that they face. And so, while the believer is looking for the ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the people of kufr, like even when you think about a battle, what are they fighting for? Glory, honor, our people, whatever. Like there's no ukhrawi, there's no hereafter that they believe in or seeking that reward. So even if they win, they lost. What did they gain? And subhanAllah, they gain with nothing that will last. And so what Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us here, and this ties back into Allah Azza wa Jalla guiding the hearts of the believers, is that your pain is meaningful, right? It's not without value. And that is just something that a person that doesn't have Iman, and he simply can't process. Like,
just as faith consoles one at the onset of calamities, it also consoles one when he does not attain or loses what he desires.
So there's two types of masa'ib that the author is mentioning, right? Or two types of calamities. One is something strikes you, like something actually happens to you. The second is that you lose something, someone that you loved, something that you wanted. No.
Therefore, if the believer loses his beloved, be it his family, son, property, close friend, etc., he is comforted by the sweetness of Iman. Iman is the best replacement that the believer has for anything he loses. And this is something clearly seen and experienced. In reality, losing something beloved is counted amongst the calamities. It was the Iman of...
So the author is going to mention two examples here of this type of calamity, which is to lose something that is beloved to you, and how the people of Iman responded to that loss. And we all face loss. And so it is important for us to pay attention to this, but it's also time for the adhan. So we'll call the adhan, insha'Allah ta'ala, and then finish. Sah wallah, it is time, right?
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله ما شاء الله صلى الله بهذا الدعوة حتى نصدق آتي محمد المصير والفضيلة وبعثه القمر
طيب بسم الله.
Therefore, if the believer loses his beloved, be it his family, son, property, close friend, etc.
It was the faith of Yaqub.
Nah, if it was the faith, it was the iman of Yaqub that allowed him to bear the losing of his son, Yusuf, despite his immense love for him. When his brothers asked him to allow Yusuf to come and play with them, he said,
Inni layahzununi an tadhhabu bih. And I actually want to lock in on this for a second. He said, it grieves me to let him go with you. Like, what did they want to do? What did they say they wanted to do? Not what they were actually planning. What did they say they wanted to do? They just want to play. Like, how long does that take? How long does it take to play?
An hour.
Hour, a couple hours, whatever, right? And then they come back. And he's saying, it actually makes me sad for him to even leave me for that period of time. That's an indication of a lot of love, like a powerful bond that he had with his son. I don't mind if we stop at this for a little bit, because I think this story goes by too many times and people don't really process what's happening. Allah Azza wa Jal here at the very beginning is allowing us to see how that bond was, how powerful it was. Because what you're going to see at the end is what? Because of his grief over Yusuf, alayhi salam, what? Ibiyaddat aynah. All right? His eyes turn white. We'll talk about what that means, inshallah. Turn white from sorrow. Type. So here, understand the bond. And that's for how long? A couple hours. Type. How long was Yusuf actually gone? I didn't say that. Talking decades.
No.
All right? Before he got to see his son again. The author is going to make the case that if it wasn't for his eman, he would have died because of the love, because of losing what he loved so much, right? Because the emotional states that kill you. Yeah.
It grieves me to let him go with you, Yusuf, thereby informing them that the cause of his grief, preventing him from letting him go, was that he would not be able to bear being away from him for even a mere hour. However, they argued with him until they were able to convince him. So that Allah could settle a matter whose result was preordained.
Yeah, in other words, they convinced him, and that was what Allah Azza wa Jalla had written, because this is how Allah Azza wa Jalla wrote for that story to happen. So many things, so many benefits that we get from the life of Yusuf alayhi salam that we would have never gotten had it not been done that way. Nah. So if this was his state.
So if this was his state, having this intense love that cannot be expressed in words, is it possible to imagine that he could have borne this separation for so many years? Rather, one would expect that the pain of parting with him would have soon rent asunder his liver.
I'm not know about that translate, but anyway, it would have killed him. It would have ripped him apart. All right? Yeah.
However, it was the strength of his iman and his hope in Allah that allowed him to restrain himself for all these years until Allah brought about the relief that he has promised the believers.
So I do want to go through this because many people ask this question, and because everybody has to deal with some level of loss in the dunya, it is important to understand what happened in the story of Yaqub alayhi salam. So here, the grief that Yaqub alayhi salam faced was so intense that Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ, that his eyes became white because of the grief. Now, Al-Qurtubi and others from amongst the scholars of tafsir, they say it's not the grief, it's he takes it back to the grief, but it's because of the crying. It's actually because of the crying itself. Now, I want you to note that that's a lot of crying that would lead to that point, right? That a person's vision is actually impacted. Now, whether he went fully blind, and some of the scholars of tafsir say he went actually fully blind for 6 years. Others said no, his vision was impaired, like severely impaired because of the crying. Either way, that's a lot of grief. Like, does that mean, and I want us to think through this, because subhanAllah, sometimes a person sees how a person may respond to death in the family, and it may hit them really hard. And maybe they're thinking, well, it hit me so hard because I don't have eman, or my eman is weak, and that's why it hit me so hard. It's not necessarily the case. And nobody alive today has the eman of Yaqub alayhi salam, right? But it hit him hard. And so I actually want to just kind of walk through this. Maybe we can understand this in a different way. So the first thing to note is that grief is a natural human emotion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that in us, and it's part of what makes us human. And if a person never has any grief and they never have any anxiety, then that may be an indication that they have a mental disorder, like there's something going on. Now, the Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge in Allah from both, because when they become an overwhelming quality that a person has, then they become crippling, right? And so some anxiety, if you will, which we'll just say is what worry about the future, some of that is what's going to make you plan properly, make you put, but you don't have so much that it then impacts your tawakkul upon Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? So now, in your mind, you got plan A, and if that doesn't work, I got plan B, and then if that doesn't work, I got plan B1 and B2 before I move on to plan C. And a person, no, that's also over the top. It's too much, and that will show a lack of actual dependence upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring about whatever He's decreed, right? So that's not the type of anxiety we're just talking about enough that makes you human, that you think about the future, not that it's going to overtake your thoughts. And similarly, grief, what does that actually mean? It means a person is sad about something that happened in the past. The Prophet ﷺ never got sad. He was the Prophet ﷺ, and he got sad. Inna al-'ayna latadma'. The Prophet ﷺ said when his son died, he said what? The eye sheds tears. But let's go further than that. وَإِنَّ الْقَلْبَ لَيَحْزَنُ. And the heart feels sorrow and grief. He's the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're not supposed to emulate him, imitate him and everything. Nah, I'm too cool to be sad. What is that? Psychopath stuff. That's not healthy. It's not healthy. So starting there, grief is a natural human emotion that Allah